Welcome back, Guardians. Today we're going to cover another build. This time we're going to cover the Warlock PvP introductionary build that I've been playing with a lot since Season of the Splicer came out. So today we're going to cover what I call the Frozen Toast Warlock build. And to start off with, as you can probably imagine, it builds off of the Stasis subclass. And to start off with, what you want to use for stuff in your Stasis subclass? Well, I usually use Healing Rift. You can of course use Empowering Rift if you like to get more extra damage from your weapons. Then I use Burst Glide because the burst when you jump is really good to cover some ground in PvP. Followed by, well, there's nothing else outside of Penumbral Blast. It's great, it gives you freezing, it's just, you know, it's good. And then finally, I use Dusk-Filled Grenades because they lock down areas pretty nicely. So those are the abilities that this build is gonna run with. As for aspects, I'm gonna go with Glacial Harvest. I know a lot of people think it's kinda mediocre, but it's actually really good. If you freeze targets, you get shards, and these shards regenerate your melee ability, which is that you would get more Penumbral Blast, which means you're gonna be able to freeze even more targets. So it kinda synergizes nicely between having Glacial Harvest and Penumbral Blast. Using them together, you're gonna get a lot more melee energy, meaning you're gonna be able to freeze a lot more enemies all the time in PvP, and that is just great. Secondly, I like to use Ice Flare Bolts, because if you manage to freeze someone and you manage to kill someone while they're frozen, you're gonna spawn some Seekers that are gonna freeze nearby targets, and this is superb for PvP. So those are kind of my go-to aspects for this PvP build, and because they're fairly neutral, they help you play and get comfortable with the Shadebinder subclass. As for fragments, this is kind of a dealer's choice. I like to use Whisper of Durance because your slow lasts longer, meaning guardians who get slowed will be slowed for a longer duration. After that, I would go Whisper of Fissures because it increases the damage and size of the bursts when you destroy a stasis, crystal, or a frozen target, meaning you can get some AoE splash damage with this. For the third one, we're going with Whisper of Refraction. Whisper of Refraction basically just makes sure that each time we kill someone that's frozen, we basically get more class energy, meaning we'll be able to use our Rift more often. Finally, we're going with Whisper of Hedrons because Whisper of Hedrons, well, basically every time you freeze a target, which is going to be a lot due to, well, Glacial Harvest and Penumbral Blast, is going to boost your weapon damage, and this is a really good combo for PvP, especially if you combine it with, say, High Energy Fire. Then you're going to get a higher upkeep on more damage, and that is something that, well, you do want to strive for because it makes killing enemies a lot easier. And now that we've covered the subclass, what about the mods and what about the weapons? Well, for weapons, this is called a Frozen Toast build, and there is a reason for it. First and foremost, Frozen kind of refers to the fact that we're using stasis, but the toast part of this refers to that we're using the almighty Jötun. Jötun is incredibly fun and easy to use in PvP, and you're probably gonna get a lot of hate mail for using it because of how easy it is. But if you want to get a good KD ratio, and if you want to have a good special weapon that doesn't really require a lot of skill, then Jötun is gonna be a great choice for you, especially considering it has this target tracking and you don't have the ADS with it, and it's just an overall fun weapon to use. Apart from that, as always, your primary weapon of choice is going to be a 120 hand cannon due to the range, the ability to free tap and even 2-tap if you get a good amount of stacks with Rampage. It's just an overall great choice. I would recommend something that actually has Rampage, such as the True Prophecy or Igneous Hammer. Of course, this is a subjective preference. If you like any other weapon, then go ahead, use that weapon. The fact of the matter is, you gotta play with what you're comfortable with. I'm just here to help you get an overall idea of how you can make a good introductory Warlock build to play with in PvP. And finally, you want to use any heavy weapon that you like. Honestly, heavies in PvP for me is something I don't really care about because there's so little heavy ammo to begin with, so it really affects your gameplay by a minimal amount, if even at all. As for armor, well, luckily for Warlocks, recovery is their primary stat, meaning that the higher recovery you have, the faster you're going to regen your health, but it's also going to make it so you regen your class ability faster, so try and get 100 recovery before anything else. Secondly, I'd love to go Intellect, because Intellect means you're going to be able to use your super more, and the Stasis super for Warlocks is incredibly overpowered in PvP, so make sure to get as much Intellect as you can. And after that, it's whatever you want to go. It could be Resilience, Mobility, Discipline, or Strength. strength, it doesn't really matter, go with what you're comfortable with, but try and focus on getting as high amount of recovery and intellect as possible to begin with. And for mods, well, this is also depending on which primary weapon you're using. In my case, since I'm using on 120 hand cannon, I use hand cannon targeting. I also use hand cannon loader, unflinching hand cannon aim, fusion rifle scavenger because I'm using the Jotun, and this slot really doesn't have anything else going on with it. These scavengers, unflinching, loaders, and finally targeting mods is something you want to use for the weapon you're currently using. So don't use hand cannon if you're not using hand cannons, which is obviously fairly obvious for most people, but you never know. Just use whatever for the weapon you're using. As for combat mods, I would actually use high energy fire. High energy fire means that each time you have charge with light, you gain bonus weapon damage, and this makes it so you can potentially 2-tap guardians with a hand cannon, which is really good. And to get the charge with light orbs, once again we're going to use taking charge, which means each time you pick up an orb of power, you're gonna get charged with light. And to even add more charge with light stacks towards your guardian, we're also going to use powerful friends. Powerful friends gives you more mobility and makes it so each time any other ally that's using powerful friends picks an orb up, you also get the charge with light stack, meaning you're helping your team while you're letting your team also help you if they're using it themselves, which is a good combination. And as for how you play this, well, it's up to you. You can be really aggressive with this or you can be really conservative. I like to be very aggressive with this because you can pre-fire your Jotun around corners and then yes, peek around the corner, fire off the shot, and it will automatically track to the guardian who you saw on the radar, and that's usually just a free kill. Hand cannons have gotten a slight range nerf, meaning they don't have as long range to get full damage, and for this I also highly recommend that you play a more aggressive play style. And if you can get these two things to work together, that is getting the pre-fires of Jotun going, getting those headshots with your hand cannon or whatever weapon you're using, you're gonna have a lot of fun with this because it's just an incredible overall good build. And if enemies that are using shotguns are trying to get too close to you, you can always use your penumbral blast, which by the way we have spec'd out, so it actually gives you more damage when you freeze the target, while also giving you shards that give you more melee energy, meaning you're going to be able to get back into the action way faster and be able to use penumbral blast more often. That is kind of how this build works. Just assert your dominance with Jotun, drop a few teabags if that's your cup of tea with it, and just infuriate people with the fact that you're using Jotun. And with that being said, I want to ask you guardians a question, and that is, what do you think about the Frozen Toast build? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always I want to thank you so much for watching, and I want to apologize for the lack of uploads. I am gonna get better on it. I have taken a small break due to our in real life stuff that's gotten in the way. But as always, I want to thank you so much for watching. I want to thank you for all the tremendous support you've been giving this channel, and I will see you next time, because next time we're gonna talk about Season of the Splicer, and we're gonna take closer looks at the new weapons. But until that time, this is TCSpectre signing off.